Hi there, it's Jonathan. I'm back again. I want to thank you all for participating in the contest the other day there. It was a lot of fun reading all your comments. I gotta say, I did read every single comment. There were 411 entries, so if you left a comment, I read it. And thank you for that. Quick note, the winners are Cindy, AJ, and Kermit. I have sent you guys an email, so if you're watching, please get back to me and we'll work out the details to get you your prize there. And anyways, today I wanted to quickly answer, because I took notes on your questions, so I wanted to answer as many of your questions as I can. Let's get started, and we'll rip through as many of these as we can today. Hopefully your questions answered, and yeah, let's get going. Okay, so Jeff asks, are the fingerings the same for an electric bass versus an upright bass? Yes. How to play with a drummer? That's a really good question, because the bass player is really required to lock in with the drummer, right? And so I guess the really simple question, or really simple answer could be, pay attention to what he's doing. Feel the main beat, right? What's he doing? And that may be what he's doing with his kick drum or one of his other drums. But it depends a little bit on the drummer and the song, of course. But try to feel the main kind of groove and then lock in with that. You don't have to worry about all the little fills and stuff that he does, because you could be doing your own fills. Fills are fills. They're not the main part of the song, right? You want to identify the beat and then lock in with that where you can. Christian asks, is it too late at 60 to learn the bass? Absolutely not. I've talked to people who are far into their 80s, and they're just picking up the guitar for the first time or the bass for the first time, and they're loving it. And if you're 60, you got tons of time left, and I really encourage you, if that's something that you want to do, then give her and do everything you can with it, because learning an instrument is a very fulfilling thing that you can kind of add to your life. A lot of you asked how to make walking bass lines. Now that's something that requires a little bit more of an answer, so I'm not going to touch on that now, but I will do something for you coming up. Might be a few weeks out yet here, but stay on the list, and I'll get you something at least briefly on the walking bass lines, okay? John says, surprise. I thought that because I play guitar, I could play bass, but I can't very well, so that surprised him. And actually, many of you said something along the same lines. That, I play guitar, can I play bass? Because I play guitar, does that mean I can play bass? And in a way, it does, because the lowest in pitch strings on your guitar, so strings 3, 4, 5, 6, are tuned the same way as on an electric bass, okay, or as on a bass. So if you're familiar with your guitar fretboard, then that fretboard knowledge will transfer to the bass guitar, okay? But the things that you do with that fretboard is a fair bit different on the bass. For one thing, with guitar, if you're picking out a lead line, because some people also ask, does playing the bass help with lead guitar? And it can, and not necessarily, because the bass is quite different. The bass, as we've mentioned just a minute ago, is trying to tie in with that drummer, right? And so you're actually keeping the rhythm, and it is different than guitar. I know there are a lot of different things you can do on the guitar. Getting complicated here, but if you know the bass and you know the guitar, they really do cross over a lot. But to learn the bass is very different than guitar, and just because you're a guitar player does not mean automatically that you're going to play bass very well, okay? It has its own learning curve. But that said, if you know your fretboard on a guitar, that's a huge starting point. It really helps as you're going into the bass, okay? Ben asks, what's the proper hand technique with picking, etc., right? Well, personally, I use a pick, and I hold it in these two hands. I got a pick here, I think. I got a pick, and I hold it between my thumb and my index finger, and then I use my last 3 fingers, and I kind of pluck the strings that way. So it's a bit of a hybrid style. Some guys use just the pick, some guys use just their fingers, okay? I know a lot of people, I've been told personally that, if you use a pick, you're not serious, or stuff like that. And honestly, those guys, they're not really seeing the bigger picture. You can play very fast with a pick. That's a big benefit with the up-down picking, alternate picking. But I've met guys that are very, very good with their fingers as well. So to a degree, it's personal preference. In some cases, it depends on the style of music you're playing. Herman asks, how do you prevent sore fingers? There's only one way, my friend. No pain, no gain. How do you get away from playing the root note always? Grab a copy of Decoding the Bass Guitar. I've heard that it's an excellent resource for that kind of thing. What else have we got here? Jerry asks, how can you get someone playing the bass quick? Well, you got your 4 strings, E, A, D, G, and basically you just got to learn the fretboard. If you're familiar with the guitar, you should have a good idea of what your notes are on the fretboard. And then if the band is playing a G, just play a G. It's the root note of the G chord, so you're safe with playing that. Okay? If the band is playing an A or an A minor, you can get away with just playing the root note which is an A, on your bass. Okay? It's very simple. It's not a lot of fun, but it'll get you going. Okay? Quick and dirty. Joe asks, I never learned to read music before, so can I play the bass? And I'm going to actually address this a little bit later in another video, I think, because it's a really important issue, whether or not you need to learn to read music. And the answer might surprise you. So I'm going to leave a little bit of suspense there, but we'll address that soon, okay? Kevin asks, why is the B below the E and on a 5-string, and is the 6th string a C if it's a 6th string? And the answer is yes, it is C on a 6th string, and the reason why it's a B on a 5-string below the E, versus if you're familiar on a guitar, the B is actually the 2nd string. The reason why is because the bass is tuned to 4ths. The guitar is not. It's mostly tuned to 4ths, but on a 6-string guitar, the B string is actually a little bit different. It's tuned a semitone lower than a 4th, which throws things off a little bit. But the bass is straight 4ths. Every string is a 4th away from the other, okay? Chris asks, is it true that if you play a bass with a pick, it means you're a frustrated guitar player? No. You can be a very good bass player and use a pick. So don't let them tell you otherwise. Mike asks, is it true that bass players are cool? Of course. All right, Joe asks about learning chords on the bass, and can you play chords on the bass? And yes, you can play chords on the bass, but you're not going to play them in the same way that you do a guitar, okay? You're not going to strum your bass for one thing. It's going to sound terrible. It's going to be muddy. Occasionally you can do stuff like that if you're up in the higher registers. You can get away with that, and depending on the song, it can be very cool. But by and large, you don't want to be playing the bass in the same way as the guitar, okay? You can't just form a G chord and strum it, because that's going to sound terrible. But you can arpeggiate through the notes that are in a chord, which sounds very cool. And I've actually got a short little video that I'm going to be sending out in a few days, which shows you a little bit on how you can do that and some tricks that you can use to get some techniques like that going, okay? What's the best way to transfer lessons to playing? Jam with something. If you don't know of people that you can jam with, then get yourself a backing track and jam with that, okay? Blair asks, can you use the pentatonic scale? Absolutely. Talk about that in Decoding the Bass Guitar. If you know your pentatonic scale from the guitar, grab a bass and see if you can apply it. It's the same thing, it's the same thing as from the bottom 4 strings on the guitar, okay? Charles asks, can theory really take you to the next level? Absolutely it can. Theory has really brought up my playing. Personally, I've noticed that because if I'm, getting into a bit of a rut with my bass playing or with my guitar playing, I can just sit down and say, okay, well, and if you watch the video from yesterday, you'll see just very briefly kind of my approach to the scale and how you can look at that in terms of numbers and patterns. And when I'm getting into a rut, I can just sit down and look, okay, well, what combinations have I not tried before with the intervals? And that can open doors to new things that I can try out. So theory definitely gives you that foundation that you need to move on, and will bring you to the next level. And Frank asks, are scales necessary? Absolutely. Scales are, the solo is scales, riffs are scales, anything you play is scales, because we only have 7 musical notes to work with, right? The scale is 7 notes, and so if you don't know what the scale is, then you're really kind of at a loss as to what you should be playing. You're just kind of, bouncing around wherever. And so the scale is absolutely crucial to understand. It gives you a framework to work within. And if you watched the video yesterday, introducing to bass theory there, Hopefully you picked up a little bit on that. But definitely scales are absolutely crucial, and I do focus on scales a lot in decoding the bass guitar. And I'm not talking about, you know, boring repetition. In fact, in this course, I give you a couple techniques that you can use to make practicing your scales a lot of fun. And scales should be fun because scales are what you're playing. Everything you're playing is related to the scales. So, good question. Good questions in general. A few of you have already grabbed a copy of Decoding the Bass Guitar. If you haven't already, I encourage you to check it out. I do offer 100% satisfaction guarantee, so the risk is all mine. You don't have to worry about that. So go on, check it out. There's a link right below the video. Hope you enjoy it, and even if you don't, I got lots of free lessons and stuff like that on the way. So stay tuned, and we'll see you again next time.